We're at 6 o'clock. Gary, can you take the roll?
Scott Fishel,
Here.
Dennis Keeney,
Here.
Denise Brewster,
Here.
Belinda Grassi,
Here.
Lori Krenisky.
Here.
Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On behalf of the board, I would like to welcome all the students, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's Board of Education meeting. I would like to remind everyone that this is a meeting of the Board of Education held in public for the purpose of conducting the school's district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is time for public comment during the meeting in the public participation section of the agenda. And before we proceed with tonight's agenda, on behalf of the Riverside Local School District Board of Education and District Administration, I ask that we take a moment to honor the memory of Robert Sicker, who was a custodian at Riverview Elementary who tragically passed away last week. Our heartfelt condolences and deepest sympathy go out to Robert's family and friends during this extremely difficult time. In recognition of his life and the impact he had on all who knew him, I ask that we observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Make a motion to approve the minutes as attached. In those minutes, Gary, for
Is it
May
May 22nd, 2020, board minutes. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Can you take the roll?
Scott Fishel,
Aye.
Dennis Keeney,
Aye.
Denise Brewster,
Aye.
Belinda Grassi,
Aye.
Lori Krenisky.
Aye.
Motion carried. Approval of minutes. Motion to approve minutes from the June 4th, 2025 special meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
Gary, can you take the roll?
Dennis Keeney,
Aye.
Denise Brewster,
Aye.
Belinda Grassi,
Aye.
Lori Krenisky,
Abstain.
Scott Fishel.
Aye. Motion carried. Special report.
Okay, continuing our pathway to excellence. So now we're going to talk about two more areas in the pathway, specifically the Riverside Way instructional framework as well as the instructional rounds component, because they're both directly connected to one another. To start off, the Riverside Way instructional framework, the belief of this is that high quality instruction is grounded in consistent student-centered practices observable in every classroom. What's really unique about this is, even prior to my arrival, Dr. Malacca reached out to Riverside staff and asked them to explain what good teaching looks like and what they can expect in the classroom. Those answers that were gathered from there were compilated into this Riverside Way instructional framework. So it's really what we expect every lesson. It's really about and focused on engaged learning, active participation through discussions. The teacher is not just the sage on the stage. They are the guide by the side. They work to engage, ask proper questions, connect the learning to real world scenarios. Student-centered classrooms. We talk a lot about choice and how students learn and how they demonstrate mastery, so providing additional choice that goes with that. What we're finding is that this used to be and it still is a challenging task, but some of AI tools make it a little bit easier and a little bit more efficient in the way we do this. Use of blended learning and differentiated instruction. We talk a lot about personalized learning. I'll get back to personalized learning at the end of this, but really kind of different ways to capture these learning topics, and then clear learning targets and incorporated use of technology. The important part about learning is presenting the why. It works with adult education. Why are you learning this? It also works with students. Why are you learning this? Why do you need to do this? And at the end, what are you expected to learn? I think that's one of the keys. It wouldn't be a talk about any type of learning. We can talk about data coming from me. I love data, but really using data to drive instruction. Last month we talked about the assessments that we use and why we use those assessments. Well, one of the reasons we use those assessments is to drive instruction. We know where students are. We know that we need to either hit something a little bit more in depth, or we know, hey, our students kind of mastered that, so we can move forward. We can group students using data, put them in specific groups to kind of really talk about so that they're in like-minded groups, so that they are working on the same level. We know which groups need a little more assistance and which groups we can push and stretch. And then students reflect, they seek feedback on that, and they engage in meaningful assessment. So if the lesson is set to their level, we know that they are going to reflect, seek feedback, and engage forward. The next part of that talks about, this framework, set the culture, the environment, and setting the expectations for that. So when we talk about positive classroom culture, what we expect of all classrooms is that it's a safe environment where everyone is treated with a mutual amount of respect, and we encourage risk-taking. We encourage risk-taking amongst our teachers when we ask them, hey, take a risk and try personalized learning. Take a risk and step out of that comfort zone. So we expect that. We ask the same out of our students. Our teachers model respect and they encourage student voice. We want to hear what the students have to say. We ask for their feedback. We want them to have have that autonomy in their learning. And then we also expect them to be engaged and to be present. So working on ways to make sure that the lesson is relevant so that they can be there and that they can engage in that lesson. And finally, we talk about a supportive physical environment. What's it like to be in a classroom? They're not necessarily, when you go into a classroom that has this framework in place, there's flexible seating. There's opportunities to learn in different manners. It's not all in rows, 4 by 6 rows. They're sitting in groups, they're sitting in pods, there's couches, there's different opportunities. Some of them are standing, depending on what they need and how they're most comfortable. Student work and exemplars are displayed and celebrated. It's not just, hey, here's a check, here you get it back. This is an exemplar, this is what we're putting up. And again, technology and instructional materials are current and they're easily accessible, and they're friendly and they're appropriate to that level. And the outcome we expect from this framework as we go through it is consistent, rigorous, and student-centered instructional experience that reflects our commitment to excellence, truly one community pursuing greatness, getting better every day. It's a process to get there. It's not just we wave a wand and say, hey, turn your classroom into this. It doesn't work like that. It is a very challenge. It's taking a lot of our teachers and having them step out of their comfort zone. It's having them take risks. It's having our leaders take risks. We have some tried and true methods that this has worked in the past, and this is what I'm comfortable with, or the class, we always use dinosaurs for whatever reason. I love my dinosaurs, and this is a great dinosaur unit because it's engaging, but it doesn't hit the standards, but it's really fun. Well, okay, how do we take it to meet the standards, and what does it look like for our most advanced learners and our struggling learners, and those in the middle, and how do we kind of get that? So that's the framework. We can say we have that, but what you value, you assess. So how do we assess this? Well, obviously we do it through teacher evaluation process, but that gets our principals into classrooms to see our teachers. It doesn't really impact all of it. We have really great teaching that happens in every classroom across this district. So instructional rounds is the way we hit that. And instructional rounds really make sure that Riverside Way and the Riverside Way framework is being used with fidelity. So instructional rounds comes out of the medical field, and it's a structured, collaborative approach for educators to observe and strengthen teaching practices. The goal is to align the classroom instruction that we see on a daily basis with aspects of the Riverside Way. When we send a rounds group into a classroom, they're not going to see all of it. They don't spend the entire period there. It's a 5 to 10 minute snippet of what that class is. But what they're looking for is student engagement. They're looking at evidence of data-driven instruction. So the questions they may ask students are, why are you doing this? They look for this positive classroom culture. Is there evidence of students learning and kind of feeling that? And you can feel that when you walk in. And is it an effective learning environment? I think that, in looking at that engagement, the other thing about teachers going into classrooms in an instructional round group is, forever, teachers have kind of been in their own little islands, and they teach, and then they meet each other in the lounge, or they see each other before or after school, but they don't actually typically watch each other teach. Our intervention specialists started co-teaching, they started to get in and see different teachers, but traditional classroom teachers stay in their zone and they don't get to go see other practices. Well, this is a way for all of our teachers to go in and kind of see others and celebrate our best practice lessons to make sure that they see what those are, and it really gives them some look forwards to look through. So they get new ideas on okay, this is what this looks like. This is what engagement looks like in a classroom, or this is how they interpreted that lesson. This is a really good thing. And they can kind of take those back to their own classroom. It's also a way for us to track data. So we take these small teams, we meet them ahead of time, have a group of classrooms to go to, and kind of give them some focused look forwards. We emphasize that shared feedback and continuous improvement. It is not evaluative in any way at all. So this isn't a way that ever hits on the teacher evaluation form or any of that. It's about support and what you're doing well. So it's really about real-time feedback. It's kind of, if you use a coaching world, a coaching scenario, it's watching practice film. When you watch practice film, you learn a lot from that practice. And it's a supportive environment because there's no stakes to it. Doesn't increase the one loss, but you get a lot better if you kind of take a chance to look at it. And this is what they do. After the round, they meet as a team and they talk and they say, this is what we saw, this is what we captured, I like when they did this, and we gather that on chart paper in a large group format to look for trends over time. So the more evidence of rounds we have, we can kind of see what that data is and look at that and then plan PD for the upcoming year or the next time, or kind of where our areas of strength are and where our areas for growth are. So it really does provide it. The strengths, the benefits, again, it promotes ongoing professional learning where teachers are professionals to get into one another. It strengthens collaboration and peer support. They can really come in and say, this is a great class and this is what happens. It builds a shared understanding of what high quality education is. When we say things like personalized learning, we have a common definition. We have examples and exemplars that we can send people to say, this is an example of that. When we say engaged learning, we can say, go to so-and-so's classroom and see these students are always engaged. High quality questioning. Go to so-and-so's classrooms to see what high-quality questioning looks like in there. In terms of implementation, we train all the observers on the process. We train them to say it's not evaluative, these are your look-forwards, these are the things you're looking at. We want rounds to occur regularly within the schools. The eventual goal is that schools will go to other schools, so our elementary school teams will cross schools or cross grade levels, or high schools will go to elementary schools and see, because good teaching is good teaching. It looks different at different levels, but you'll see it there. And then the last thing is we debrief and we identify the next steps. Ultimately looking for what's known as a problem of practice. When you get enough of these rounds in place, you can identify that problem of practice. So what's the long-term impact of this, and why are we doing this, and why is this part of our pathway? Well, number one, it informs our professional development. So it tells us what we need to get better at based on what we see and what we don't see, and what we identify as some of our areas of growth. It uncovers system-wide strength, like I said, the areas of growth, and it does drive instructional excellence aligned to our district goals. So it's what we need to do to move forward and kind of how we identify those, and then we put a pathway and a plan in place to identify how do we solve that, what do we need to grow in, and what do we see. And if we have all this information, we can really do a lot more with that. So it's an area that we can make sure that we are providing that Riverside Way document. We are providing that framework in every classroom. Because when we say every classroom, we mean every classroom, not just math, not just reading, not just core, but every classroom uses and implements the Riverside Way framework. So that was a lot. I'm going to open it up to questions before I finish. Kind of a short update today.
As far as the part of this program, you are using the coaches to create consistency.
We are using the coaches, as well as Mrs. Lineweber will be leading instructional rounds next year. So that's our curriculum supervisor, and she is one of her major tasks next year is to lead the rounds process and have it consistent throughout. Anything else on this one? Okay, so I think we have one more month of these, and then we'll have covered the whole pathway. And that concludes my report.
Thank you for that. Discussion of old business. Any old business?
I have some old business. At the last meeting, there was some information shared that, there were some inaccuracies, and I wanted to make sure that we're clear about how things evolved with Buckeye Elementary. And so I just want to let everyone know that Mrs. Smolin, the Buckeye Elementary principal, created options 1 and option 2, shared them with our committee, and she detailed these room assignments because we were removing the modular trailers and bringing 3 classes into the building because the other 3 classes were graduating on to Lemuth. And the board appointed me as the committee chairperson, and as a board member, you know, heading the committee, I chose option 2 as the best option. And so I just wanted to be clear about that. But in the meantime, we're continuing to monitor the kindergarten enrollment. I don't have, the last numbers I had were what you sent out, Dr. Rotino.
They haven't changed.
Yeah, so Buckeye and Riverview are down a section. And so if the numbers stay within the current range, which Buckeye has 29 students instead of 60 last year, so it's significantly down. Right now, that would translate into 15 and 14. And even if we got some more students, it's highly unlikely that we're going to have 3 sections, which, you know, frees up a classroom. And that's going to afford the opportunity, and we can't make any promises until, you know, August when we see what's happening with last minute enrollments, but that we're hoping that the art and music teacher would remain in their current space next year at Buckeye. And then Dr. Rotino is continuously monitoring these numbers. Right now at Riverview, they have 73, which translates into 18, 18, 18, 17. No 5th section like we had this year. So I just want you to know it's something we continually monitor, actually, the central office does. And, you know, we typically will have people enroll the last minute, but I don't see a significant change where it's going to force another class at this point. But we will determine that. So I just...
Can I ask
yes.
a question?
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing a little bit of math. So 18, 18, 18, and 19 would be 73, right?
Oh, sorry, 19, yeah,
Just
typo.
want
Sorry, you're right.
to just be accurate.
Yeah, I know, he's the math person. All right, so, but still, we're under 20. We're also 4 sections, not 5. And so that's going to help with the transition. We did move over a couple of special ed units over there, and we also have had, we will have some students that are going to be in pods, but this would afford 1 additional classroom that we would not have to have a class in a pod, because some sections are, you know, 5 sections, and there's only 4 sections at a grade level. So that's part of the reason for the addition, is so that we have adequate space. All right, and then I think that's it for that topic.
Anything else?
I'm just curious on our policy on committees. And there's no power within the committee, and the committees don't have authority to make decisions. And so I just want to make that as a statement. You know, we discuss things in committee, and committees make recommendations, but the recommendations are supposed to come to the board, and the board's supposed to have conversation about those. I'm looking at it right now, so I don't know that one individual on a committee can just make a decision. We probably should have done that by board conversation.
Option 2 was discussed at the board meeting, and we voted on it.
Yes, I realize that. But you also just said that you decided that.
That was what I decided to bring to the Board
in
of
the committee,
Education.
right, so,
Yeah.
it was not recommended by the committee as a whole, I'm just saying. So, that's all.
Anything else? Discussion of new business?
I have some questions on some items that were brought up at our finance committee. We can either talk about those things now, or we can talk about those when we get to the finance committee report. We had some information that came through at the last minute on the finance committee that had to do with some borrowing options that were being discussed by the board president and our municipal advisor that were not brought up previously related to the Riverview cost. Are we going to have any of that conversation? Will we Mr. Placco, are you going to share any of that information at this meeting?
I did not bring any of that information tonight, just, I did update the permanent improvement fund forecast that included borrowing figures on it, but it's similar to what was presented previously.
Is there a plan to have conversation about that? Are we moving forward with having any considerations on that, or was that just, I just want to make sure that we're discussing it at the table?
So you want me to handle that, Gary?
Sure.
Okay. So all that was information that was being gathered. Nothing's ready to come to the table yet, even for discussion. So that's just updated info on what the bond rates are right now and what the borrowing amounts would be if we so chose to move forward. But nothing's ready to come to the table unless you want to bring something to the table.
I don't want to bring anything to the table. I'm just asking, are we going to be discussing that in a finance committee meeting before it comes to the table?
So it may be in buildings and grounds, it may be in finance, it may be in both, it may be at the board table. So it is informational right now, and until something's ready to come to the table, there's really no discussion on it. Unless you want to bring something to the table.
I would consider otherwise. I would think that if we're going to be considering borrowing for Riverview, that we should be talking about that as at the table. If anybody is thinking of wanting to borrow for Riverview, I mean, that's what you were investigating and those were the questions you were asking, and so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as what's on the table for discussion. We didn't discuss it in the finance committee meeting to a great extent because we didn't really have the information at the time.
Right, there's
Mr.
nothing on the table right now unless you want to bring something to the
But you
table.
said you collected information. What she's asking is, can the information please come to the Finance and Audit Committee?
Well, I'm just gathering information, so if I were to bring all the information I'm gathering, we would be days in meetings. I'm just gathering information. That's not to be shared until it's ready to come to the table.
No, the information can be shared with the
But the
entire
infor-
board at all times.
But the information was shared. Mr. Placco
It
did
was-
put
it
it in
was
the Friday
forwarded
packet.
to our treasurer, absolutely.
So, but he did include it in the Friday packet. I want to make sure that if we're going to have conversation about information that was in the Friday packet, that we have it at the table. So
Well, you
that the
can cer-
entire community can have a listen to what
Well,
it is
certainly you
that's
can
being
bring it up,
considered.
as you just did, and we can discuss it,
So if we're
as
going
we
to,
just did, so. If you'd like to bring something to the board to formally discuss, to vote on, you're welcome to bring something.
I do not want to vote on anything. What I would like is to have open discussion about this topic at some time when the information can be presented in full that Mr. Placco had provided to the board in the Friday packet.
Okay, anything else?
No?
Thank you for that. Okay, Education Committee and Liaison Reports, Buildings and Grounds. So in Buildings and Grounds, this week, Mr. Arlesic made us aware that for the Buckeye trailers, the HVAC, the Freon was extracted from the HVAC units. Security and fire was removed by Southeast Security. The door fobs technology removed by Zenith Systems and RHS Technology Department. And the illuminating company disconnected the power and removed the meters. One thing I added was that the company hired to dismantle those went to get a demolition permit, and they have to have an asbestos report. So Mr. Arlesic is looking to have a company come in and do a report, expecting and hoping that that's clean and we can proceed. So that's the update on that. The summer cleaning progress is moving along very well, and we have in this meeting right here an approval for equipment purchase, and those are the 2 units you're looking at from Middlefield, is that right? That's referenced. So we'll be approving the purchase of a couple of units that the district needs to be able to do their maintenance work. So we also talked about getting 3 quotes, which Mr. Arlesic will be procuring for the asbestos removal project. We're certainly looking to make Riverside as safe as possible. The asbestos has been there forever, right since the building was built. And we'd like to get that taken care of so we have a safe environment for everybody. So thank you for your work on that, Mr. Orlesick. So that's the Buildings and Grounds, the Business Advisory Council. The superintendent said we wouldn't have one this month.
You're welcome.
So I say that.
Or
Talking-
next month either.
Or next month, okay. School's out, so we
Yes.
don't have those meetings right now. So, okay, so that's it for Buildings and Grounds. Okay, curriculum and programming?
Okay. The curriculum committee met on June 10th. There was no meeting in May, and we had several updates. The K2 Wit and Wisdom reading program that was implemented this year will be establishing learning labs next year to promote collaboration across the respective grade levels and in their building and also across the district. So it isn't just teachers within a building. There will be a focus next year in developing a writing scope and sequence. That was an area that staff felt that they needed to put some more time and attention into. And this will enable students to build on their writing skills as they progress through the year and into the next grade levels. Grade 3 through 6 will begin their training in the new reading program called Benchmark. The teachers receive the materials prior to the end of the school year, which is very beneficial to be able to look that over the summer. There will also be additional training for the teachers in the new CPM math program, and that's college preparatory math, right, in grades 3 through 6. Our former math coach, Katie
That's,
Lineweber. Pardon me?
Not to 6 through 8 CPM.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did it wrong, 6 through 8. Sorry, it was the benchmark is 3
Correct.
through 6, sorry. All right, that's why you don't type at night. All right, so grades 6 through 8, and our former math coach, Katie Lineweber, is going to be continuing to assist with this process. The honor math teachers, they were in Columbus this summer, is that correct?
Yes.
And for specific training in the program, which also includes Algebra 1. For professional development in 25 to 26, there will be a continued focus on personalized learning and the MTSS process, including the advancement of students at the higher end. Up till now, we've kind of been focusing on remediating students and getting them up to where they need to be, but we really need to focus also on the students at the higher end. The science courses of study was reviewed by the Board of Education and will be approved at tonight's meeting. Next year, the English Language Arts curriculum will be posted. Part of the reason for the delay is the implementation of some of these new series that we need to get through.
Which it is posted now.
Yeah.
It will be updated.
It'll be updated with
Yes,
the new
yes, yes.
series, right. And then second semester, the math curriculum will be approved. Some preliminary Ohio State test results were discussed but are not ready for release. When we initially get this data that they call, there are many corrections that need to take place, and it's called scrubbing the data, getting everything accurate before it's reported out. So there were some strong gains in several areas, particularly Algebra 1, as I understand, and but there are still some targeted areas that are in need of improvement, and it's a good read for us to, all right, here we are, where do we go from here? And then due to the retirement eligibility and some staff moving on, we have found some quality staff members joining us at Riverside, and I want to congratulate all of you, and I think you'll be introduced by our superintendent shortly. And then lastly, there's going to be some playground projects and additions for students that will be added at Riverview, Melridge, and Buckeye as construction projects proceed. We're just looking at that. We talked about adaptive, we've talked about preschool or let's say little guy size, because if you don't right size them, in fact, I actually made a visit to several preschools to look at how that looks differently than some of our playgrounds. And then also a place to ride your trikes. You can't really ride some of those trikes on the mulch, so sometimes creating a pathway which can be used for multiple things. And we are maybe going to look into proposing some things that our construction classes might be able to build for us. It's, something that I think would be a nice contribution by them. Okay, that's all for that. And then the Buckeye Ad Hoc Committee is done. The Strategic Plan Liaison, we really, just focused on the Pathway to Excellence and what Dr. Rottino covered tonight, so
Thank you
that's
for
it for me.
that. Policy Committee?
We did not have a policy meeting. I do see that there's a policy item on the board agenda, so I just want to make sure all board members know that did not come through the policy committee, so there's been no discussion or understanding of where that came from. And then also there was no update on Alumni Association.
I'm sorry, you said no update on the alumni? Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to speak too.
Okay.
I did get a chance to attend, along with several of the administrators, their alumni golf outing at Paintsville Country Club last Saturday, and I think there were 11 or 12 groups. And it's a worthwhile cause, and highly encourage other people to participate so we can have a shotgun start and not spend as much time starting one after another. But it was well done and very nice to, be
A
able to
lot of good work done
participate.
by the Alumni
Yes.
Association, and our superintendent came and
I'm still
showed everyone how to hit the drives, so.
So I haven't golfed in a while.
No, and the weather was great, so
Oh,
successful
it's too
outing.
hot.
It was hot.
Yeah, too hot. I agree.
It was hot. Booster?
I don't have a report at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. Superintendent's report.
Okay, so it's been a great month, but I'm going to start with the little bit of an update on the state budget and House Bill 96. It is out of the Senate, went to conference. I know Mr. Placko will talk all things money, so I kind of avoided that and just talk about some of the policies. I love some of this stuff because it sometimes just makes me laugh how this impacts a budget, but that's another whole statement. But a couple things one of the wins I think that comes out of House Bill 96 is the language they have in there that modifies current attendance laws. Really the old current attendance laws in House Bill 410 really focused on punitive and checking boxes and making sure you have meetings. This takes more of what it looks like to be an intervention focused, and the purpose of having these attendance laws is to get kids to come to school. So this really focuses on getting kids to come to school. It does involve, if we have habitual truancy, you definitely re-involve the juvenile court system, brings it back into prior to House Bill 410. We had a great relationship with Lake County Juvenile Court. We still do, but they help with some of the truancy issues. I think that's going to help with some of these interventions here. Some of the other things that came out of it, which I thought was just to share, which are kind of unique. Now, these are subject to the governor's line item veto, I should say that, and that will come through, somebody's hit the button on that board. That'll come through eventually by the 30th, he has to sign off on it.
Oh, too late.
So-
Nick spent too much time reading.
Yeah.
the
Well,
screen.
there was no option to let it go. It just said
Yeah.
shut down or update now.
No. Oh, okay, so it's an update.
It's
So we'll go off this board. One of the things that they did is they modified the State Board of Education to a total of 5 appointees. There are currently 8 appointed by the governor and 11 elected board members who serve on that. The language reads that the 11 elected board members will serve out their term and not be up for re-election. The 5 appointees, it is one with a suburban focus, one with an urban focus, one with a rural focus, or one with a charter experience, and one with a non-public, non-charter school service. So it's a very unique way that they're shifting the State Board of Ed. They are all appointed. They take the election out of that State Board of Ed. One of the things that I'm disappointed that the governor put through that got completely eliminated was the principal apprenticeship program. I thought it was a very strong practice to put that in, to kind of really see when you enter administration, even though you do an internship as part of your experience in grad school, it doesn't really prepare you for what the job truly is. An internship program would really, or the apprenticeship program would really allow us to see, do you really like the job, and identify in-house administrators to kind of feed that throughout. Also in the In the House version, they worked in some ed choice accountability provisions for those scholarships. Those got removed in the final one that's going to the governor's budget as well. It requires districts, so it does require districts to adopt a cell phone policy that bans cell phones during the instructional day unless medically necessary or for a legitimate educational purpose. We will change our policy a little bit. We have some at the principal's discretion, and that actually gets removed to just that. One of the unique and ironic things to this whole policy is in the next line down, it says you have to adopt an emergency plan that allows students to use their cell phone if in case there's an emergency on campus. So it kind of speaks out of both sides of its mouth in that plan, but that's something that we will have run through the policy committee to make sure that policy fits with what the intent is of that. It says by January 1st. At Lamouth in our elementary schools, we pretty much have this plan in place now. At the high school, we are going to start implementing that the first day of school. So it will be a plan that, and we can do that in our current policy. As we update our policy, we are going to go based on these other rules from the first day of school. So that's one thing that I talked to Mr. Hall about to make sure we are ready for that. Another thing that came out of it is requires districts to provide, and I put this in quotes, advanced learning opportunities for math. For each student who scores advanced on a math achievement assessment at the end of course exam. So if they score an advanced on a math, on the grade level math test or on the algebra or geometry end of course exam, we have to provide an advanced learning opportunity for math, which is basically the equivalent of subject acceleration or something that looks like that, as long as we have it in the building. So if you score advanced on geometry, we look at what's a 2-year advancement after that. Well, that's you kind of individual through their pathway, but it might even be calculus. Well, that may be a struggle for kids, and we don't typically offer our AP calculus, but in order to have it, you have the prerequisite skills, and they didn't necessarily address the issue that you have to have Algebra 2 or equivalent to graduate, so you can't skip that. So there are some. I understand the premise behind this, but there are some kind of holes in some of this, as typically are. We'll work our way through it. For us, in looking at just a preliminary impact, it wouldn't necessarily change what we have. It might change a couple of our options and our offerings at the middle school moving through. But ultimately, when we have students who score well in math, we meet as a team and look to advance them anyway and have those kind of things and bring the parents involved. The parents can't deny this, so we don't have to force them. So if we have to go to score 5 and the parents say, wait a minute, nobody wants this. You can move them and keep them in the track they're on. And the last thing that it does do, and it doesn't mention how, but it does create partisan school board elections with the inclusion of a primary. So I know that impacts all of you. So that is coming down the road. Again, they are subject to the governor's line item vetoes. And this is one that both OSBA, BASA, OASBO, and all of them has encouraged them to, has encouraged the governor to veto these partisan elections because no one really knows how it's going to work out and work that way, moving through what a primary is. And it also eliminates certain people from serving on a school board, police, fire, those in state government, those sorts of things. We have interest. So that is the policy changes. Now it's been a really exciting month throughout the district. First and foremost, and I am kind of putting the bats away a little bit before all of it, but I want to introduce our new administrative hires. We're really excited. Katie Lineweber is going to be our curriculum supervisor. She could not attend due to a medical appointment, but we are excited to have her. She was our former math coach and kind of is stepping up into that role with familiarity to the district. Kaylee Flint is in the back. Kaylee, stand up, please. Kaylee's our middle school principal at Lamouth, coming to us from Willowick Middle School. As an assistant principal there. We are really excited to have her on board. She is district president, has some great experience through that, and has already hit the ground running, meeting with all the staff and all of that. And not yet approved, but on the agenda tonight is Ms. Camille Ritt. She's our executive director of student services. She's going to replace Cheryl Lanning, who will be retired. She was here all day today. She's been here a lot as well, kind of getting to know staff, getting introduced and all that, and brings a wealth of experience. Again, comes from Willoughby Eastlake as a special ed supervisor, basically in charge of preschool, their SAIL program, and a number of other assignments as directed, which any supervisor has. So we are super excited to have them join the team. And they are already all have been in the office throughout this month and even more. And then It happened. 75 years in the making. Riverside finally has a state championship team, and our softball team waited till the very last season in the 75th year to win it. Boy, was it a great game. Riverside, first team to win a state championship. They beat Mount Vernon 8-6 in a thrilling 7-inning game on June 8th. It's supposed to start at 1. I think it started at 3:30 or 4. It rained all the way through. These girls were so impressive in how they did it and the way they did it. They were down. The very first play of the game was an error, and they just bounced back because of the field. The ball was wet, slipped out of the shortstop's hand. Didn't let them phase them. They went through more kind of ups and downs. I've never been to a game where every pitch was important. Kind of turned the edge with a line shot out of the field by Kevin's daughter. Then that kind of got him back. As soon as that happened, Coach Boers said to me, "We're winning this game." We were still down 2. I go, "You don't math so well. That's only 1." But it just turned the momentum around. And then again, Maddie Kevin again hits a bases clearing double to take us ahead. It was unbelievable the way they just, nothing phased them in this entire game.
He said Coach Boers instead of Coach Ross.
Oh, no, it's fine. No, I was sitting next to Mr. Boers on the stand. Coach Ross he doesn't deal well with change. The delay and all that was a little bit different with him, but everybody else was amazing. So we're sitting in the stands, realizing we're going to win this game. What do we do? Because we've never done this before. So we were fortunate enough to have such great relationships with Painesville Fire, Concord, or Painesville Township Fire, Concord Fire, as well as the Sheriff's Office. We got the team escorted. The Sheriff's Office met them off 90 to 44. The fire trucks met them on 44. Drove the team back into a great number of fans who were there at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night to root them on. The Beaver was there. It was awesome and just a great thing. And then we went on to what's next. On June 18th, we hosted our state championship celebration. It rained all day. It was outside and it just poured all day, buckets. But we had it outside. We wanted to have it on the field. Thanks to Mr. Arlesic and his team and all of the work with that field we could have played. That field drained so well, so Buildings and Grounds having them come out and redo the field was amazing. We could have actually played that night, even after all the rain. Outfield might have been a little bit soggy, but it would have been okay. But we got to celebrate them. If you drive out, you'll notice the 2025 state championships banner hanging at the top of the dugout. That is going to stay up there until the next state championship team replaces that. My hope is that it's not another 75 years. So I'm hoping we get them a little bit more frequency. Not to be remiss, our track and field athletes had another on the same kind of week. We had a number of track and field athletes qualify for the state meet. These are individual events or small relay team events. So they happen more frequently. We had a lot to celebrate at Riverside. Allison Urbis placed 8th in the 100-meter hurdles. That's running fast and jumping at the same time. That takes a lot of coordination. Kate Meinke placed 11th in the 1600. When I say she placed 11th, she cracked 5 minutes in the mile. I mean, that is insane, and that was still 11th, but that's moving. I said I don't think I can run a half mile in 5 minutes, under 5, and she absolutely killed it. So it was amazing how she peaked then. Josh Porter placed 7th, and Mark Poggi placed 9th in the shot put. Both of those were over 50-foot throws, which is a 12-pound implement throwing at 50 feet is really far. Kendall McCaleb placed 16th in the long jump. And Colin Boris, Richard Johnson III, Jake Lagerstreet, and Kendall McCaleb placed 14th in the 4x200 relay. I do think Kendall was a little bit hampered with a hamstring, and they were saying he was a little tired, so that was kind of why for that. But again, just great efforts by all of our athletes, and awesome to do down at that state meet. I'm showing up. We did celebrate 2 groundbreaking ceremonies on May 30th. Like I said, May was the month at Riverside. We broke ground for both Riverview, the Riverview Edition, and the CTE building. And those sites look very different today than they did a month ago. If you drive by them now, as you drove by now, they're up and working. And I will give some updates, and these are So Roger Riachi could not be here tonight. He had a prior engagement. But he did send me some updates on both of those from the CTE aspect. The building pad is set to commence this week. Interior demolition for ramp foundations commenced on June 24th. The demolition of the new door openings commenced on 6/24. So if you drive by, you can see the green spots that are open where those doors are. The CMU infills are scheduled for early next week, and the foundations are scheduled for the week after to kind of make sure that all of those things are set. So just to show some pictures from that. Just some of the pictures that are going through. And it is constant in and out, construction going on, banging, everything else like that that we're hearing. Running into some unexpected issues when you deal with a 75-year-old building and trying to tie to it, and not necessarily the greatest of plans at times. But Mr. Olesic and his team are doing an amazing job kind of handling it with poise and making sure that we can still kind of have school, that school's going to start on time, and all of the stuff that impacts the schooling operations are done. But ultimately that we are moving forward. One thing to notice on these is the cooler in the top left-hand picture that you see there is no longer here. So that's actually moving, it's getting replaced and moved over to the right, but the door is cut open and we're ready for it. But that's been, so it's amazing how much we've changed in even a week since these pictures have been taken. So Riverview update, site rough grading will be complete by the 27th, so that's tomorrow. It keeps testing back is really well. The building pad's complete, pad staking is complete, and the excavation for the foundation is commencing this week. The stair demolition is complete, and the new egress door opening and demolition is in progress. So that's moving along as scheduled. They did have a couple days because of weather last week because of the rain, but they don't foresee themselves to be behind schedule at all. Again, you can see the window is removed from the property, as well as they've kind of gone through and done a lot of work there to make sure that that foundation is ready to go. And the last thing we celebrated was, actually the second to last thing. On June 2nd, we hosted our second annual district-wide end-of-the-year recognition and retirement celebration for our entire staff. That's during the teacher checkout day. We invite everybody back, provide them with lunch. This year we catered with Fire and Ice, so I want to thank them for coming out with a pizza oven. It was really good food. Made a pizza and salad. Had a chance to everyone to celebrate our retiring staff, put up posters designed for each of our retiring staff with their pictures, some of their highlights, got some quotes from them as well. Just a great day of fellowship, kind of sitting around, meeting, talking, and really overall positively attended by most staff that were there. And the last is congratulations to the class of 2025. Again, another day where we thought it might have rained, it didn't. Another perfect night for graduation. You couldn't ask for a better night. And just what a great ceremony, and it was fantastic time. So wishes best lucks to the class as they go on. And that concludes my report.
Thank you for that. So on the softball team celebration, it rained all day, then it cleared up for a couple hours and then rained again.
Yeah.
So it was like perfect.
And they will be here next month. So we will have a proclamation for them as well as the team and the coaches at the meeting next month. Coach Ross is on a much needed vacation. So he is out, but he will be back. And they've got a couple other great events. The Guardians are honoring them at a Guardians game that week. And the captains as well. So they have a they're touring professional baseball teams. Maybe they'll show them how to do it. I know the Guardians is right now.
And I think we saw them on Fox 8, right?
Yeah.
They were on Fox 8. Cleveland Construction on their own put that banner up congratulating them as well. Leroy has on their sign, congratulations as you drive through the town. And Painesville Township is deliberating on how many signs to buy on the signs that you come in and where to put them. So there will be home of the 2025 Division II girls softball on the signs as you walk in. Welcome to Painesville Township. So awesome, all good stuff. They did order rings, and those rings, we're doing a ring ceremony, hopefully at a football game, at halftime of a football game or before a football game, depending when we can get that with the lead time. So I know they're working on that as well with the teams. There's a little bit more to come with them, but awesome. And there are t-shirts that are out there. We did send memorabilia out. I think it's on our website too. You can get championship softball gear. We did buy a special t-shirt for the girls, but there's the other one that is out there available for anyone who wants. T-shirts, hoodies, long sleeves, all that. So it's been awesome. Great month.
Thank you for that. Finance, Audit, and Personnel.
Yeah, we met last Thursday morning. This is kind of end of the year, getting ready for next year, so there's really a lot of things on the agenda tonight that reflect that. And we've had some resignations, transfers, retirements, all of those things that at this time of year, it really comes to a head and gets sorted through. And a lot of renewing of contracts and everything for the next school year. So everything is pretty much, I won't say boilerplate, but things that are necessary transitioning from one school year, getting ready to go to the next. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you for that. Update from the treasurer.
All right. As always, we'll do a quick overview of our financial reports for the month of May. Always available on board docs and on the treasurer's page on the website. At the end of May, the total cash balance of all funds of $40.9 million. Of that, the general fund balance was at $26 million. The permanent improvement fund is at $7.8 million. Of that amount, $7.7 million is encumbered towards current projects, and the unencumbered balance at the end of May was $117,000. Appropriations and revenue estimates, we're currently 91.67% through the fiscal year. Revenues at 101% right now. Expenditures are at 88.2%. Just to point out that when we look at this each month, I don't really highlight this, we're looking at the original estimates we prepared. We set up the budget back in September. We don't really update it with the way we update our forecast, so we kind of keep those the same. Back in September, we didn't know what the reappraisal amount was. That's where most of the extra revenue came from, was from the valuation increases were a little bit higher than we originally forecasted. Going to the next slide here, our revenue for the month of May for general fund is just shy of $3 million, which includes $611,000 in unrestricted state foundation payments. It includes $2.1 million in homestead and rollback state reimbursements from the state of Ohio. That's the portion of property taxes the state pays on homeowners' behalf. Interest for May is just over $97,000. We're currently getting 4.48% in our Star Ohio account and 3.78% in the Red Tree investment account for an overall yield of 4.22%. Expenditures for May were just at $4.9 million. Wanted to highlight, we received the Auditor State Award for fiscal year 2024. This marks 10 consecutive years of receiving the Auditor State Award. Just wanted to thank my staff. They're the ones that do all the heavy lifting in the office, make sure that we are following all procedures, and all their hard work and dedication is what leads to this, because obviously 10 years precedes my time here by a couple of years, but we're happy to go 10 years in a row and hoping to continue that. Comes with a set of state match, right? State budget update. I'm going to pass out some simulations real quick. Just kind of show what our state funding is projected to look like from the state of Ohio. Now keep in mind that these simulation spreadsheets put out by the Legislative Services Commission is more to highlight for the state to know their obligation for state funding. Obviously they run calculations for each district based on the current known data. It could change from these figures a little bit. Our enrollment's pretty steady, and the way the formula's set up, I wouldn't anticipate any drastic variation from what's projected. So highlighted Riverside, all of Lake County on this line, on this spreadsheet, but for our estimated funding for our current fiscal year is just shy of $8 million. It's $7,964,000. Based on what was released by the conference committee, their projection for FY26 is just over $8.5 million, so it's about a $584,000 increase in our state funding from last year. And then the following year would increase an additional $393,000 on top of that 500. So in year two of the budget will be almost $1 million higher in state funding than we've received previously. So we did okay as far as from that perspective of the state funding formula. They are phasing in the final 2 years of the Fair School Funding Plan. The major concern though is they're not updating the cost inputs to the formula. But they're updating the revenue inputs, which makes districts look quote unquote poorer, in comparison to the state. So That's one thing that we were hoping to get those updated inputs, so while the formula is pretty much phased in, it's still not truly phased in because they have not updated those cost inputs, and I guess we'll see what happens in the following biennium budget. Another piece, you'll see on the second bullet point, House Bill 335, that was a bill to eliminate inside millage for all government entities except for townships. That bill we talked about in the Finance Committee as well, and we were looking, if that's implemented, it was about an $8.3 million loss to the district annually. They revised that bill. At the time of the Finance Committee, we talked about inside millage and substitute levies, and we're currently at the what's called the 20 mil floor, and we have a substitute levy that's currently at 2.9 mils. So in this House Bill 335, they were to include that into the 20 mil floor calculation going forward. That piece of 335 made it into the state budget, where they're going to include substitute levies and emergency levies and those type of levies in that calculation of the 20 mil floor. The other part about eliminating inside millage did not go into the budget. It's still on the standalone bill, and so we're watching that as it progresses. If that does get passed in the law, there'll likely be legal challenges on that because inside millage is authorized by the Ohio Constitution, and our belief is the state legislature can't overrule the Constitution. This slide I just passed out, it's actually from the 5-year forecast presentation, so if you look at that on our website, you can pull that up. Didn't have time to get it in tonight's slideshow. This shows all of our current levies, and you can see the subtotal of general fund levies towards the 20 mil floor, and then that substitute levy at 2.9 mils. If we had gone back in time and substitute levies were included in the 20 mil floor calculation when the reappraisal happened for this year, we would have hit the 20 mil floor anyways, but they're not going to roll back our millage now at this point. It would just now be included in that floor going forward. So on the next reappraisal, we were originally projecting our 5-year forecast about an 8% valuation increase based on historical data of the average increase during a 3-year update. By including that millage in the floor, we won't see as much of a revenue increase when the next triennial update comes up, and that would be, which would lower our projected revenue in 2020, fiscal year 2028 and 2029, depending on what that update is. When you look at it, if we have a 14.5% increase in values in 3 years, we would hit the 20 mil floor again, assuming there was no other levies enacted between now and then. If the increase in that time is higher than 14.5%, we would realize revenue gain at that time, assuming no other legislative changes happen in the next 3 years. So something that we'll monitor, and the next treasurer will monitor as we update the 5-year forecast. We'll continue to update those projections, and obviously trying to figure out what the next triennial update is going to be is just anybody's guess at this point. So it's all more to come on that. Other thing that was implemented in the state budget, if you recall, the House proposed a 30% limitation on cash balances. The Senate proposed a 50% limitation on your general fund cash balance. They landed on 40%. That came out of conference committee. And it's based on your prior year expenditures. And so right now it'd be this current year, we're looking at FY26, we'll be looking at FY25 expenditures. And based on where we're not quite closed out of the fiscal year yet, but we're 40% of our current expenditures are about $22.5 million. We're below that amount, so we have nothing to really worry about as of right now. The concern would be in the future if there's additional levies or income tax or whatever the board decides to do in the future. If those levies are approved by our voters and put into place, there's always a spike in collection, and as part of the levy cycle, you have higher collections in the beginning as your expenditures continue to roll up. So that's something that has to be watched carefully for all school districts in the state, assuming it's not vetoed by the governor. Ed Choice voucher update. The ruling came out this past week here that they ruled Ed Choice unconstitutional. What does that mean? Nothing at this time, because the state's going to appeal it, and then whatever decisions come out of that will be appealed again, one way or another. So we'll probably end up in the Supreme Court at some point. Ohio school funding has been unconstitutional for a quarter century, and we're still dealing with that, so what does it mean going forward? I guess we'll see as time goes on. And then lastly, I was asked to update the permanent improvement fund forecast, that we've reviewed multiple times recently. I'm going to pass out 2 different versions here. So let me pass these down.
I had spoken with a judge about that bill, and kind of what you said, it would be an automatic court case, and a challenge. Is it constitutional? Because you have the government almost having competing bills, and how does that square up constitutionally? So that's not going to be pretty if that passes.
So the 2 permanent improvement fund forecast I passed out, just if you look at the top of the first page, there's a little bit of like neon highlighting to FY27, there's a little blue of FY26, and I'll get to what that means when we get to the second page. So as you recall, the permanent improvement fund forecast that I provide shows 5 years of historical data of actual expenditures. In the current fiscal year, which is FY25, we show our current expenditures plus all the outstanding encumbrances, because we have to include that in our calculation in order to certify if there's funds available to sign contracts. Fiscal year 2026, for me, New Year's Eve coming up on Monday, so on Tuesday, 2026 starts in my world. Anything that's encumbered but not spent yet will move forward to FY26, so that FY25 and 26 columns will drastically change in the next update because we're going to cross fiscal years. I highlighted, so right now the current 2025 column, the revenue and expenditures include all the actual revenue and actual expenditures and encumbrances. So on the revenue side, there will be an interest posting for June. I didn't include an estimate for that. I just wanted to tie it to our system where it says today. So they'll probably get about another $20,000 in revenue. So in total, we started the year at a $9 million cash balance. Some of that was encumbered for about $3 million. That was encumbered for projects that were happening, like the vestibule project, the track, school bus purchases, and things like that. We collected about $3.6 million in revenue, which includes our property tax collections, interest income, and then we had the advance from the general fund of $325,000 that will be returned in fiscal year 2026. And then below shows all the items encumbered this year, including the Riverview and Career Tech projects, leaving us with the ending unencumbered cash balance right now is $79,140. Going forward into FY26, I did tweak a couple things from prior forecasts presented, and those include we added back in the school bus purchase based on what Mr. Andre provided at a Buildings and Grounds meeting that we needed to purchase a special ed bus. So that would get encumbered under 2026. So I put a $130,000 estimate there. For maintenance equipment, it was originally forecasted at $40,000, but on tonight we have those 2 pieces of equipment we're purchasing that's at $58,000, so I just tweaked that number slightly. And then in working with Dr. Malacher, the Career Tech furniture, we originally had $200,000 forecasted for that. We're probably closer to $100,000, if not lower. So I dropped that number down to $100,000.
Thank you for that work.
And then, so then going forward, the 2 versions of the forecast are the same. The only difference is right now the projected borrowing for that we have in here for $12 million for 25 years for Buckeye, Melrose, or whatever combination that is $825,000 a year in principal and interest payments projected. And I talked to Priscilla today just to kind of help understand. It really depends on when the borrowing occurs, when the first payment is. There's things that can be structured with the borrowing that usually generate what's called a premium on that borrowing, and that might can go towards that first payment. So it could be either version or somewhere in between. So
right.
it kind of depends on how that's ultimately structured. It's really early in the game to really know what that's going to look like until we get further through that process. So, any questions on that at this time?
If it falls in between and it's still negative, then the general fund will have to advance or transfer, correct?
You
To
would
the
have
PI fund, because we'd have to make it whole.
Yeah, and it also depends on what we truly spend, obviously.
Well, right.
Most of this is estimates based on historical spending, and so either you'd have to transfer from your general fund or adjust your spending going forward. And, a lot of this stuff is to be determined. Sometimes you're gonna spend higher in other categories or lower in other categories, so right now it's forecast.
And transfers don't come back, advances do, but
Correct.
transfers do not. Correct?
Yes, and you can also advance too, there's different, those are both options, but depending on how things trend going forward, it just would depend on what the needs are.
Thank you for that update.
That concludes my report.
Public comment. Anyone wishing to address the Board of Education will be recognized by the board president. Speakers are requested to speak from the podium. Do we have a podium?
Right over there.
Okay. Kind of a podium. And identify themselves and their topic. The comments are limited to 3 minutes. Okay. Hearing no public comment, consent agenda, finance and audit.
I give us a minute to flip all the pages this time.
There's a lot of them.
Oh, boy, yeah.
I think it's a new record.
Oh, is it? Double signed. A lot. Double large.
Okay.
SS.
We're on, yeah.
I make a motion to approve the items listed A to RR, listed on the finance audit consent agenda as recommended by the treasurer. Could I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Platko, can, on item 10, no, just on the grant applications and awards, that's next year's we've already been awarded those dollars for next year.
Yeah,
Those emails.
that's our initial allocations. But there's one for a safety grant that we just received through the Ohio Attorney General. So that one we have, and that kind of crosses fiscal years. The other allocations are for fiscal year 2026. The state's implementing a new system, which they even told us ahead of time was going to be a disaster, and it's probably more of a disaster than they anticipated. So we don't have all of our allocations yet, so those will probably update in the July.
I was gonna say, they look a little lower than
Some
normal.
were like 50% of what we've gotten in
They
the past.
put 50% in, they've said, but they're still working on the kinks in the system.
And then it doesn't include the carryovers,
Correct.
which don't come through till what, like September?
Usually, we have to file the final expenditure report by September 30th, and they come in October, and then we revise our grant applications.
Okay. And then can I just thank the individuals for their donations? We had Larry Watson, who donated to the George Insco Memorial Scholarship and the David Shaner Memorial Scholarship Fund. We had Charities Aid Foundation America donate to the Riverview Elementary Activity Fund. Riverside Alumni Association donated to the National Honor Society. They also donated to the Riverside Choir. The family of Andrew Costner donated to the Academic Decathlon. Bruce Beller of Lakewood donated to the Riverside Art Department. George Haddon to the Clyde C. Haddon Memorial Fund. John and Cecilia Staniszewski to the Riverside Theater. Sue Hale donated to the George Insco Memorial Scholarship Fund. The class of 1962 donated to the Insco Memorial Scholarship Fund, and Parkside Elementary gave money for a projector and cart for the gym. So thanks to all those for their donations.
Thank you for that. Gary, can you take, well, I'm sorry, it's yours.
Yeah. Okay. Gary, go ahead and take the roll, please.
Denise Brewster,
Aye.
Linda Grassi,
Aye.
Lori Krenisky,
Aye.
Scott Fishel,
Aye.
Dennis King.
Aye.
Motion carried. Consent agenda personnel.
Okay. I make a motion to approve items A through E listed on the personnel consent agenda as recommended by the superintendent. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? No discussion. Gary, please take the roll.
Linda Grassi,
Aye.
Lori Kniske,
Aye.
Scott Fishel,
Aye.
Dennis Keeney,
Aye.
Denise Brewster.
Aye.
Motion carried. Consent agenda, curriculum and programming.
All right. Make a motion to approve the items A through C listed on the curriculum and programming consent agenda as recommended by the superintendent. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right. Mr. Placko, could you please take the roll?
Lori Kniske,
Aye.
Scott Fishel,
Aye.
Dennis Keeney,
Aye.
Denise Brewster,
Aye.
Linda Grassi.
Aye.
Motion carried. Consent agenda, buildings and grounds. Make a motion to approve the items listed on the buildings and grounds operations consent agenda as recommended by the superintendent. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Gary, can you take the roll?
Scott Fishel,
Aye.
Dennis Keeney,
Aye.
Denise Brewster,
Aye.
Linda Grassi,
Aye.
Lori Kniske.
Aye.
Motion carried. First reading of the new revised board policies, 8805, flags and displays. This is just procedural and needs to be announced, and so it will be for a policy. It needs to be 2 meetings, so next meeting there will be discussion if necessary or needed or wanted, and a vote will be taken. Board of Education update. Board of Education will provide updates and/or discussion as the board wishes. Any updates?
Is there any reason why we're not discussing the first reading of the revised board policy?
If you would like to
currently?
discuss it, we can discuss it.
Yeah, I would like to discuss it.
Go ahead. What would you like to say?
I would like to know where this board policy came from. I read it, but it doesn't really state anything policy related. It's just a list of items. We already have a policy, 8800, that includes definition and displays for the flags and for other items that may be donated to the district. I'm curious where this is coming from. Is it Neola?
It's not Neola. Mr. Fishel presented it as one. I did send it to Mr. McIntyre. He made some changes, or recommended some changes for the board. Maybe we can pass those out as well.
If I'm not mistaken, and maybe Mr. McIntyre can chime in, isn't there some legislation currently out there waiting to be voted on and discussed down in Columbus regarding this type of policy anyway?
I believe there's an item in the budget bill that deals with flags and what they can be presented on certain buildings. I was going to ask him, I'm not sure how we pertain to it, whether it pertains to us, but I know that there is something in the budget bill that I saw today as I was reading
Right.
some of the 5,500
And so
pages.
wouldn't we be expecting some policy changes to be forthcoming as a result of that at some point in the next policy packet perhaps? Because I would imagine there's quite a few things in the budget that they're going to have to update policy on.
There's going to be some significant changes, that's for sure. I'm not sure if this is going to be one that will be included, but I know that we will get one probably with, I would say, the next 2 months to get to some of the recommendations as they work through it.
So yeah, we can have a policy if we'd like, and if it overlaps with a state law, that's okay. It doesn't mean we wouldn't have a policy because there's a state law. If a policy overlaps with another policy, then Mr. McIntyre, would you like to address that? If you have one policy overlaps another policy.
Sure, yeah. I mean, if the law makes it a policy that we have in place either not applicable or somehow requires us to redefine the terms of that policy, then we would do that to comply with Ohio law. We do that twice a year at least here because lots of laws are passed that impact the content of our policies, and those revisions come through as part of our routine business. I've not reviewed the portion of the state budget bill regarding the flag content.
Well, the bill's only 5,000 pages. You haven't read it yet?
Yeah. Not that part yet, but we will get to it, and Neola will certainly review it as well, and if there's anything that impacts your operations, we'll make the appropriate recommendations.
So again, I'm reading what this says, and I'm trying to ascertain what it says. It doesn't define what the policy is or what it says, how we're supposed to display. It just gives a list of items and it says this is the policy, but then it doesn't say what the policy is. It doesn't say what the display criteria is. It's not defined in the policy. Usually when we have policy, something is defined on how that is supposed to be interpreted, and this isn't. So I was somewhat confused as what this is doing. I don't understand the purpose of this.
I didn't write it, but I did review it and revise it. And one of the points that I added in my revisions was to make clear that the list of items, I think it's A through H if I'm not mistaken, are considered permitted displays. And I think that was the intent as I read the draft of that policy, was to essentially define what permitted displays are on district property or somehow attached to district property.
So what's on our agenda is different than what Mr. McIntyre had given us? What can I ask?
I just received this back today.
Yeah, I received it, I think, earlier this week. I made my revisions, and I just sent them to Dr. Ratina.
So procedurally speaking, are these changes enough to make the next board meeting the first reading?
It would require another first reading, I believe.
Yeah, I think there's...
I mean, just to be safe.
Yeah, I think they're substantial enough that it would make sense to have a new first reading on the revised version, and then to talk about those potential revisions.
Okay, that's what we'll do. In the next board meeting, this language will become the first reading.
Okay. We'll be done.
I would like to schedule a policy committee meeting. Do you know, since Mr. Schlick is out?
That would be me.
Thank
So
you. I'll
I
get a
will
hold
work
of you
with-
to schedule
Yep.
that. Thank you.
Okay, Board of Education updates. Would anyone like to do a Board of Education update? Okay, next meeting announcement. Board of Education special meeting, June 30th, 5 p.m. Board of Education special meeting, well, possibly July 1st, 5 p.m.
Yep, that's if needed.
as needed. Board of Education special meeting, July 7th, 5 p.m. Finance and Personnel Committee, July 17th, 8 a.m. Board of Education meeting, July 24th at 6 p.m. And is what we normally do. July 22nd would be Buildings and Grounds. Can we insert that? 7:30 a.m. on the 22nd. Thank you. We are going to adjourn to executive session. Be it resolved that the Riverside Local School District Board of Education hereby adjourns to executive session at 7:18 p.m. to discuss negotiations and personnel matters relating to the employment and compensation of public officials, plus pending litigation and other matters required to be kept confidential by state or federal law. And the Riverside Local School District Board of Education hereby designates all matters discussed in this executive session as strictly confidential and finds that this designation is warranted because of the status of these matters and the need to preserve confidentiality to properly conduct the business of this Board of Education. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Can you call the roll, please?
Dennis Keeney,
Aye.
Denise Brewster,
Aye.
Linda Grassi,
Aye.
Lori Kniske,
Aye.
Scott Fishel.
Aye. Motion carried. And the board will not be having anything other than the adjournment of the meeting. So if everyone's going to leave, we'll stay here. But if not, we can go to another room.